how Jeffrey Epstein got his money, how he got rich. There's a thread that I've never seen the brilliant investigators really pull on that's so fascinating to me that I hope someone smarter than me out there with more means and access to information can pull on and figure out. That's worth discussing. And that is the transition from Robert Maxwell to Jeffrey Epstein. So Robert Maxwell dies. What's up, guys? Thank you as always for hitting this video. 3 quick things. Number 1, if you are not already subscribed, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We are going to be having a long sit down with an Epstein victim coming up, and we also have a very special returning guest to break down all the emails in a very expert way. You are not going to want to miss it. Number 2, if you would like to see early uncensored releases of my episodes on Patreon, you can join via the link in the description below. And number 3, if you'd like to check out previous episodes of the podcast, that playlist is also listed down below, which includes episode 381, which I put out a week ago, where we go through all the emails from the latest tranche of the Epstein files drop. Enjoy this episode with me and my boy Joey Deef. Remember we fed that woman to the shark?
We fed her to the shark! We fed her to the shark, Deef!
That's my favorite thing
That's
I've
the best
seen.
thing ever.
Oh my God.
We fed her to the shark!
Fed her right to the shark!
Shout out Tim Dillon. That was an incredible rant. But welcome back to the Great Society Show, everyone. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you're watching it after it was released on Patreon. You can join the Patreon in the link below for our weekly show that Deef and I do. But I am Julian Dorey.
And I'm Joey Deef. How you doing?
How you doing? So obviously, last week we had the episode that we put out where we were just reacting to all the emails that had come out with the latest tranches of Epstein files, and we're continuing to get more information because there were 3 million in there. And obviously, I was pretty worked up when it came to the Howard Lutnick stuff because to see someone at that level, in this case, the Commerce Secretary of these United States of America, tell such a beautifully crafted, I might add, dramatically told, if you will, story about the last time he saw Jeffrey Epstein in 2005, and actually stare into the eyes of the interviewer on that podcast he did back in October and say, and in the 6 to 8 steps it takes to get from my house, from his house to mine, I told my wife that I will never be in the room with that disgusting individual ever again. And we cooked his ass because obviously the emails revealed that he was in the room with Jeffrey Epstein. And in fact, Deef, right after that, remember he said, so I decided that I would never be in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. And really what Howard was doing was he was recalling all the things that he was in the room with Jeffrey about, because we have the fucking emails, Howard. We saw all of them.
You stupid asshole, Howard.
Very, very, very stupid man. But I'm going to get to the point about how these people think about you and me and all of us out here in a second. But that little crash out I had just around the 1 hour mark of that episode was completely... I didn't even see that coming, but I think that was just the anger of having looked at this case for 7 years and never reacted in the way that felt proper, which is just let it out, have like a little yell session. So if that was a little loud for people, I do apologize for that. I do not apologize for the point that I made. I think it's an important point because as we sit here today, Joseph D. Philippus, on Friday the 13th, at 2:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, this jerk-off, Howard Lutnick, still has a job. The president has been asked about it at press conferences and said, I didn't know he visited the island, but I never went to the island, and he hasn't fired him. And actually, even, I would say, more significantly, Howard Lutnick, and this is the point I wanted to make about the elites, Howard Lutnick has not had the decency to resign. Okay, now hopefully by the time this comes out on Saturday, he's done that. a little Friday night news dump that never hurt anyone,
I don't
right?
know about that, but
Right?
I don't know.
Hey, look, I'd love to think he's going to do the right thing.
I'm
but
calling him Howie from now on, just because
Howie.
like he reminds me of like I want to give him a little shake of his hair, like you dumb little asshole Howie.
there is no hair there.
You scumbag.
You want to rub the dome, you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know
Pause.
what I might disappear if that happens.
You might disappear if that happens.
You don't
It's
know
like,
what they're cooking up.
It's like saying fucking Biggie Smalls in a mirror 3 times. Like,
Well, you know what happens if you do that.
we don't talk about it. We're on air right now, Thief.
Sorry, ladies
Remember,
and
this
gentlemen.
time it's not just for Patreon.
Yeah, no, that's where I fucked up last time. Last week, I was like, oh, we're doing a Patreon episode. I'm gonna eat this 10 milligram gummy and hang out. And I show up looking like a school shooter with my hood up and sunglasses on, and I'm like, I left here, and I'm like, all right, well, that was good. I didn't really say much, and then Julian's like, yeah, we're gonna make that episode public. I was like, that's great because I look wonderful and just present. So, one of the comments was like, this motherfucker in the other chair don't even need to be there. I was like, damn, he's not right or not wrong.
Don't worry about the comments, Steve. The people love you. But
I love them.
That all aside, what I was saying is the fact, Deef, that this guy has not resigned and had the decency to do that is a direct reflection of how this very small micro elite, which is what I think we need to start calling them, because we are talking about the elite of the elite, the literal billionaires / in some cases when they aren't billionaires, people who are at the tops of the bureaucracies and organizations that quote unquote, are in charge of how the world functions on a daily basis. These people look at all of us, as we have seen in the emails, as useless containers of bodies that just exist around them to steal the oxygen that we should have absolutely no right to steal. That's probably why they throw all the climate change on us and everything. But Howard Lutnick went into that congressional hearing on, what was that, Tuesday morning, Deef?
Yeah.
I believe it was Tuesday morning.
Yep.
And with a dead straight face, fully admitted to the members of the board there, or what do they even call it? I never remember that term. The committee. I'm sorry.
Get the wrong guy,
to
pal.
the members of the committee that yes, in fact, he did lie through his teeth fucking 4 months ago in that interview where he told that dramatic story about the first and last time he ever spent time with his fucking wall-sharing neighbor, Jeffrey Epstein, and he did, in fact, take his whole family, and he mentioned the whole thing, his wife, his children, his friends and their children, and all of our nannies. Didn't ask how old they were. I don't even want to know. To Pedophile Island in 2012. And he couldn't recall why they did it, but he can guarantee that they were there for an hour and, quote, nothing untoward happened. Let me give you a little piece of PR advice, Howard. Normal people don't say the word untoward. Normal people don't say that, my friend. Okay, they don't talk like this. They don't talk like that's a normal thing to say, as if like that's gonna, oh, by the way, that means I'm innocent and everything. But it was very interesting to me that the guy also decided to, like the way he phrased it was, we were there for about an hour and I left the island with my wife and with my kids and our nannies. As opposed to what? Leaving them fucking behind? Well, were you just gonna, you'd be like, all right, I'll dock the boat. You know what? Me and fucking Lerman, old Lur, we're gonna go for a deep sea fishing trip. Why don't you girls stay here with Jeff and have a fucking day? Like, was that on the table?
Summer jobs.
Summer jobs. So that's a great point, Deef. They were right of age at the oldest ones, right? The 16-year-olds.
It's nepotism. Right, in the summer you say to your dad, one of your buddies has to have a job for me this summer. Let me work the snack stand or something at the island.
Oh,
who goes to an island for an hour too? Come on.
For an hour.
An hour? You couldn't even say, like, we went for the afternoon. Like, what a dog shit lie.
He went for
1 hour.
Well, one lie spirals into another, that even when you cover the lie, you start to lie again and you don't even know you're lying. But the fact that he did this all with a straight face and almost said it like this, and that's all it was. And then, obviously we can get into the 2015 dealings with him, the drinks in 2011 and 2012. And this is just what we know about on emails. We don't know about the rest of the shit they were doing, or if there were text exchange. We don't have that.
They might have had a door that led into each other's homes.
It might have been like a fucking Sheridan Inn. Maybe they still do that in the elites, right? Where they like share a fucking door.
Yeah.
Someone's doing coke in one room, then you come to the other room just to hit the bong.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
It would make
Why
sense.
not?
And then he left the hearing. He was dogged by reporters outside about resigning, ignored all of them, and continued to do his job all week. This guy thinks that you and I and all of us are so stupid and so worthless that he can look us in the eyes. I'll give him that, because he was sitting there in public looking into the eyes of the people on the committee and therefore into the eyes of America and say, yes, I lied completely. I concocted an entire story that went out publicly in front of all of you in a dramatic voice and dramatic tone, telling you how I did not, in fact, associate with the most prolific, awful, disgusting pedophile maybe to ever live, among other things as well, money launderer, arms trafficker. We'll talk about all that. But despite that, it's okay. Here's what I did do with him. I associated with him all the time. And by the way, I'm going to go back to doing my job right now. What the fuck are you going to do about it? That's essentially what he did, America. And he dropped the mic as of right now. And it is emblematic of how these people view all of us. So I just thought that was a perfect chef's kiss on the week. And the way that the administration has handled this, we'll get to fucking my least favorite Italian-American later, Pam Bondi, but the way that they have handled this is a masterclass in how to not handle a crisis. It is a masterclass in what not to do. If you wanted to write a Maxwell published textbook on this, you know, you might say that this would be the how to not do PR for dummies. I don't know, something like that. And it's extremely disappointing because obviously it's also breaking a bunch of campaign promises when you're doing the cover-up, which is also probably illegal, which is also a whole can of worms legally down the line. We'll talk about that later. But it's at the end of the day, it's embarrassing. That said, I do want to make this point. This is a really big opportunity for the left and the right to unite here, because let's not get something lost here, right? We're focused on the administration at hand, the Trump administration, for their current role in all this, as we should be. But this has been covered up through multiple administrations.
Oh, yeah.
Democrat, Republican alike. So all these, we're going to put Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie to the side for a second, and I'm going to say Nancy Mace as well. I've been very impressed with some things in the past few days that she's going out of her way to do. We might get to that at some point. We're going to put them to the side for a second. All these Democrats that are getting these fucking finger roll layup wins because they get to ask the most simple, obvious question that's literally from an email that shows guilt right in front of them to these people that they're going to get a political win on. You know, that's just because Trump has given them that win by making this a problem, creating the biggest Streisand effect of all time, calling it a hoax, saying it's nothing, redacting names, and making people look at it more and get more suspicious and then see that it's bad and then assume it's even worse as well. And we might be right about that, by the way. But like, the Democrats had every chance to bring this out in the Biden administration. They didn't. They had a chance to bring this to light while this guy was walking free, I might add, during the Obama administration and then during the first Trump administration as well. This is a bipartisan cover-up. We all know Bill Clinton was on that plane 25 to 27 times, the Lolita Express. We all know that from what we even know about publicly, it could be more than this, Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House through the back door, 18 times while Bill Clinton was in the White House. So, like, this is a moment where the fog of war, if you will, between all these people on the left and right who fight each other, you know, it's all the same color through the fog. There's no blue and there's no red. I saw a YouTube commenter on, I believe it was the episode I did with John Rondi. I think it was from that because we had talked about the Epstein files when I was on that last week. Shout out, John. But I saw a commenter on that video say something along the lines of, we've been fighting horizontally and it's time to fight vertically. And that is one of the most brilliant things. I've used it since then. So shout out to whoever you are, because on YouTube, that's the thing. Like, people, it's like private names. You can't really give credit like you could on Instagram. So shout out to that person. But that's exactly what this is. You know, when I talked last week about there being no such thing as a Democrat and Republican, I mean that as a broad statement. Obviously, people have different ideas on solutions. That's healthy. That's America. It's the yin to the yang. I have my problems with the two-party system, a lot of problems, but like it's the offset of each other at the end of the day if you were looking at it under a perfect microscope. Putting that to the side, the things that we want, that people want, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, health, family, freedom, that's what everybody wants, regardless of what your ideas for a solution may be. So when we see something like this, where every end of both parties has serious complicity with an enormous cover-up and one of the worst syndicate, if you will, crimes ever committed, espionage, it's got the whole nine with it. When you see them both complicit over decades and guilty in this scenario, it is a moment where you have to think about the levers of power, the people who pull them, and therefore where the target of our ire should be directed towards. And the target of our ire should be directed towards that micro elite, to the people that think that they are better than you and me, because they do. So I hope, and the cynic in me says we won't do this because we just get so pissed off at each other online, but I hope, at least with my little pot of the ocean here that I'm boiling, there will be more people who think like this as well, who will boil their pots, and all of our pots put together will create a little movement here to where we can start at least agreeing on something and getting rid of the rot.
Yeah. The punching horizontal is the culture war.
It's the culture war.
Yep.
That's what it
Gotta
is.
start punching up.
I remember last year in January 2025, the first time it snowed, I, of course, wanted to go for a walk out there. I love to walk even when it's snowing and it's cold. But I came home to the soggy, disgusting, very, very cold and frigid, freezing feet because I didn't have good socks on. And my dumbass also didn't wear boots, by the way. That was part of it. But you got to have great socks because they can actually stop it. This year, on the contrary, when it snowed, I went for my walk, and once again, I wore my Nikes, not boots, because I didn't learn my lesson there, but I had on my hollow socks. And I came home feeling way warmer down there where it's important to not get frostbite. And just what are hollow socks, you ask? Well, they're premium alpaca boot socks, built for cold mornings, long days on your feet, and everything in between. Hollow socks are made from ultra-soft baby alpaca fiber, which allows them to be thermoregulating, warm below freezing, but comfortable when it warms up. They're also 3 times warmer than wool without the bulk. Obviously, when you're wearing socks, you want to be comfortable all day. So it's important that they feel buttery soft rather than scratchy. And that buttery soft feeling is exactly what you're going to get with hollow socks. And also, this is a brand that's made in the USA, trusted by athletes, and has over 2 million pairs sold. Right now, for a limited time only, Hollow Socks is having a buy 2, get 2 free sale. So head on over to hollowsocks.com today. That link is in my description below to check it all out. That's hollowsocks.com, link in my description below for 50% off your entire order. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. You can support our show by telling them I sent you. Yeah, we had the other day, I think it was Sonny Faz was talking about like the pizza.
Yeah, yeah,
no pun intended, by the way.
Yeah.
He was talking about how they slice up the elites will.
He called it was
no
like the
pun
issue
intended.
pizza or something. Yeah, yeah.
But they slice up the issue pizza and they say, all right, today you're going to fight over transgender rights. Tomorrow you're going to fight over BLM. The next day you're going to fight over masking. And they just distract you. And it goes back to that Stephen Kinzer story I've told a million times about what Nixon told Carter. That's the plan. That's what they do. They make you fight and scream at each other over these little 5% moves domestically that happen in domestic policy so they can do all the shit underground. It's like kind of a big fucking problem, right? So,
And then you get your little kindergarten pizza slice that's like that wide.
That's right.
From the pie.
I like that visual. That was
Yeah,
a
'cause
really
it's true.
That was a really smart way that he put that.
There's like a
episode's
parallel
not out
to
yet,
that with what we talked about in the last couple episodes with like people being propagandized but getting something for it. Back in the day,
Yes.
you had a way bigger slice of pizza, so you were like, all right, whatever.
Yes.
But now like we're literally just getting like this, and people are
Yeah.
like, I've had enough of this shit.
I'm going to make an executive decision. I'll talk to Sonny about this afterwards because it was his initial idea. I'm going to make an executive decision to change the term pizza to pie.
Yeah.
Just for the optics of this.
Yeah.
Because there are now things that are used as code in these emails
Yeah.
that I can't, I can't say there's not a there there. You know?
No, definitely not.
So anyway, we got some good stuff coming today. My longtime, fucking unsung hero behind the scenes with this show, Alessi, who's got an amazing channel. We're not going to do this yet, Deef. We're going to do one thing before it, but he's been putting out some unbelievable documentaries that I'm like so proud of as well, because these last two he put out on like the Steve Bannon Epstein relationship. And this is something that like I've directed him towards for years, like going through it and having conversations about the evidence and all that. And Alessi put all that together in like a linear way. One documentary is like 40 minutes and lays out like the backstory. And then the next one gets down into the nitty gritty of it. And in the second one, which the click-through and watch time on that's insane, but it's not doing as well as the first one. The second one is the best documentary ever done on that relationship because Alessi followed the money. He put the banks together. He put the international banks together. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit here because it is worth a ton of attention. And we will link that video down below. Don't let me forget to do that, Deef.
Yeah, my gosh.
So that people can check that out for themselves afterwards. But you're going to see some of it here. Highly recommend checking that whole thing out. Before we get there, I think because of what he discusses in that documentary, it's very important to give Leon Black his much-awaited day in the sun on this show. This is a guy we've talked about over the years, but Deef, you were telling me all about what you learned about Leon Black's father, huh?
Yeah, Leon Black's father wasn't just some average black man. No, I'm kidding, everybody. I'm kidding. I'm just here for comedy. How are you, Joe DeFilippis? Pleasure to meet you from Wayne, New Jersey. So Leon Black's father, I was like, oh, this Leon Black guy, he's a real piece of shit. I wonder if it runs in the blood. Yeah, it runs in the blood, all right, as it always does. He is the son of Eli Black. Name ring a bell?
Sounds like a 44th floor to me.
44th floor? What, at Pan Am?
Yeah.
I used to love flying Pan Am.
Yeah, back in the day.
Back in the day.
That's when you could actually drink and no one bothered you.
Yeah, so I'm going to pull this on up for you. It's already up. There you go. It's like I'm back on the gummy. But anyway, his father is this man named Eli Black.
All right, so the Banana King who tried to put people over profits. I'm going to summarize the very beginning of this, Steve, because this was interesting. By the way, I didn't know this part about him, but Leon Black's father, Eli, was one of the initial guys to try to like be a part of coining the ESG movement, which is like environmental sustainability governance or whatever the fuck it stands for within corporations. ESG is one of the ultimate projections of all time when it comes to corporations. Because whenever they say, we're just trying to do things that are in the best interest of the shareholder and our employees and having their rights and being able to do things in an environmentally sustainable way, that means that maybe at first they do a couple of those things to make it look good on the surface, but eventually they are going to do the exact opposite of that.
Right.
And that is what Eli Black decided not to stick around long enough to face the music on. Because apparently when he took United Fruit and their operations to the moon in Honduras, he was buddy-buddy with a dictator. And so when the dictator, what was the guy's name again? Gale? I think his name was Gale. When so-and-so Gale was incapacitated from a stroke somewhere around 1973, 1974, Ariano, who followed him up, basically took power. And so in order to keep and again, I'm skipping over a lot of the boring details here, but you guys can check out this article for yourself with the full explanation of all the ESG things that Eli Black was doing. But in order to keep the almost like, it's not a perfect parallel, but Ponzi schemey kind of ESG, but not ESG, so business can be a booming and we can make lots of money in America, coming back kind of thing. In order to keep that going, he paid a 7-figure bribe to Ariano and was caught.
Yep.
And so when he was caught, he did the honorable thing. Like Frank Pantangeli. The Romans back in the day, they would take the rum and that's not cool. All over the table. But he, just took the 44 story, jumping.
He was like a Japanese fighter pilot. Straight to the ground.
Straight to the ground.
Better to the sharks.
Him to the sharks.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. When did that happen too? Did you say-
1975.
Yeah, right.
So he,
Yep, February 3rd.
there it is. Right here in Manhattan, not too far away from here. That's where all the good shit happens. Allegedly. But
Apparently.
he did not live to face the music. That said, his son was undeterred by the sins of the father at all. His son forged right ahead. And I've talked about this a ton before, and this will eventually lead into Alessi's documentary here. I just want to make sure we cover a few of the points first for context. But
Yeah.
Henry Abbott from True Hoop, and that's a real thing, okay, is an unsung hero in the Epstein case who gets no credit. And I was very happy to see Alessi shout out the shit out of Henry Abbott. Henry Abbott has run this blog, True Hoop, which is an NBA blog, for like 2 decades. I knew True Hoop from growing up. He was on ESPN.com. Now, ESPN started having a lot of problems in the 2010s, so they ended up laying off like all the talent there. So True Hoop got cut eventually, maybe in like 2015, 2016, 2017. And Henry Abbott took the blog out on his own and continued writing about the NBA. Fast forward to 2020, he sees that multiple teams are owned by scions of Apollo Global Management, a major private equity firm in New York City, including my Philadelphia 76ers. And I think I started to mention this last week, but we're really going to dig into this now. So he decides, once Epstein had at that point been unalived, you have to say it like that. And
you know what we mean,
he suddenly starts making a line and saying, well, Epstein's really tied to Apollo Global, because the guys who run Apollo Global came from a company called Drexel Burnham Lambert. I believe that was the name. If I fucked up one of the names, I'm sorry. But it was Michael Milken's junk bonds house. Michael Milken is the famous founder who later actually went to prison for, I think, 3 or 4 years because the junk bonds blew up in the late 80s after Black Monday. And these guys, like Leon Black, were there with him at Drexel Burnham Lambert. And so when they left, and that's where Alessi's documentary is going to fill something in here, so I'll wait on that. But essentially, Leon started Apollo Global with the young Josh Harris and, oh my God, I forget the other guy's name. Damn it. Was it David Blitzer? Might have been David Blitzer. If I fucked that up, David Blitzer was one of the co-owners with Harris on the Sixers. I can't remember if he was the co-founder of Apollo as well. But
Here, you got Leon Black, Mark Rowan.
So it wasn't Blitzer. Mark Rowan and Tony Resler, right? Along with Josh Harris.
Yep.
But Leon Black's the top dog there. And Henry Abbott sits there and says, I wonder if there's a connection between Epstein and the guys who currently own the teams. So he starts this investigation and does amazing work, but realizes, oh my God, this 2 or 3 part investigation series that I was going to do has way more layers than that. Long story short, it turns into a 21-part series. It's enough for a very big, dense book. And it is, in my opinion, one of the greatest research pieces ever written. It spans all the way back to the Treaty of Versailles. And Henry Abbott had a chapter in there. I want to say it's been years since I read it. I want to say it was maybe like chapter 18 or something like that, called Steve Bannon. And I remember, the podcast was in my parents' house at the time. I remember reading that and like pacing around my house, stunned at how layered this was with the money and the places the money went and the culture the money went to. Steve Bannon used to have this quote that rings in my head. He would talk about it during the time Trump was running in 2016. That is, it sends a shiver up my spine now, because it actually represents the tentacles of his career. He says, politics is downstream from culture.
Yep.
You win the culture, you win the politics. It's not the other way around.
Yep.
And he said, by the way, Steve Bannon's a brilliant man. He's a very bad guy. He's a brilliant man. He's 100% right about that. And what he did in finance was he hacked into the culture. And Alessi talks all about that in his documentary. A lot of you that was a lot of the first part of his documentary. So there's 2 videos, but the first one broke that down. Obviously, like, for example, just as one off here, Steve Bannon was one of the finance guys for Seinfeld and put that whole thing together. He gets paid royalties on every Seinfeld episode that plays. So that's why part of the reason why Steve Bannon is uber wealthy. But Henry Abbott writes this whole thing out and makes all these connections. And that also connects, therefore, to Leon Black, who did not own any of the NBA teams, but he was the founder of this company that was at the heart of the investigation that he was doing. Leon Black paid Jeffrey Epstein an estimated $170 million in the last 5 years of his life for estate planning. Can we Google Leon Black's net worth?
Yeah, let's do it.
The idea of spending, I don't think...
There you go, Bubba.
13 billion. Okay, obviously a lot more than 170 million. 170 is a number I would expect Elon Musk's bills to be for that.
Yeah.
Because he's worth damn near $1 trillion. No one's paying $170 million for estate planning. If you're paying that, you are being robbed. I don't care if it's Michelangelo level work. That percentage of his wealth to estate planning is absolutely insane. So that never made any sense. But Leon also was always placed at Jeffrey's East 71st Street townhouse in New York. He was there often, and he has been accused over the years of heinous things. They are all allegations. I do have to say that. You can read some of them for yourself online. If you want to Google Leon Black minors allegations, do it. It's dark. I mean, I can't even say a couple of the things that he's accused of because it'll probably get this video nuked. But it's that bad. And this is a guy who, along with his wife, I believe, you can check me on this, Steve, was literally like the chairman of the board of MoMA in New York, Museum of Modern Art. You know, this is someone not only uber wealthy, but at the heart of culture and finance and many different things.
Yep.
And he has come into the news once again in a creepy way this week because it was revealed that through I believe it was through Apollo, Deef. Was that what it was?
Through a company he co-founded called Lifetouch. I can check right now if Lifetouch.
All right, you tell us, Steve. What was this?
Owned by Apollo. But yeah, this just kind of surfaced. Okay, it's not owned by Apollo. Looking that up now.
All right, I'll read what you have there at least.
Yeah.
So schools all over the U.S. are canceling Picture Day due to Leon Black, the co-founder of the parent company, which is not Apollo, as Steve just looked up, but it's another company that owns Lifetouch. And he's listed in the Epstein files, so they are canceling Picture Day. Lifetouch is the biggest school picture company in America and photographs millions of kids every year. Now, Deef, I gotta think.
Look at this.
Oh, no.
So Lifetouch wasn't owned by Apollo Global, but it was instead acquired by Shutterfly, but Shutterfly was acquired by Apollo Global in 2019.
Okay, so it is Apollo.
So it is Apollo Global.
I have to say this just because I have to look at the facts as we know them.
That's insane.
It's possible that this is nothing. It's possible. Possible that Apollo just wanted to buy a company that had a lot of assets that they could get good passive income on.
Shutterfly bought it for $825 million. So
it's possible. It does not say for sure guilt, but what I can tell you is a dude with the allegations against him, like Leon Black, with the ties that he has, with the people that he's tied to, with the espionage people that he's tied to, with the actions of his life, owning a company like that. This is a data war we're in the modern day, everybody.
Right. Yep.
It doesn't look good. Those are your children who are photographed and their data stored. There's a lot that can be done with that. I talk to people all the time, Steve, about everyone posting their kids, even like on Instagram and shit.
Yeah. Not
you
good.
Know, like I question a lot of that, and you know, easy for me to say because I'm not a father, but I don't know about all that stuff. Because the way things can go these days with tools from nefarious individuals and organizations, that's not something I want to figure out later. And considering that among many things that Jeffrey Epstein was doing, he was running a giant sex trafficking ring, of which a large portion of it included and was about children. One would think a great place to be able to target some data if you were trying to run an organization or an op like that into the future would be having the data on all of our kids in America so that you could find the ones through face matching technology and stuff like that to trace where they live, what kind of socioeconomic background they're from, which you can already do looking at the schools and just making an educated guess based on location and general income of the area and stuff like that, and figuring out just one here and one there. Who's a good target?
It's fucked.
And that sent a shiver up both of our spines, as it should. I'm sure it sends a shiver up yours. The more that gets built against this guy from an allegation standpoint, referring to Leon Black, the more impossible it is to believe that he is not a very, very complicit individual in things that are probably, and not probably, logically, beyond just Jeffrey Epstein, you know? And we talked about it in the last episode, who Epstein worked for, based on my opinion, based on all the facts we've had there. Obviously, it's very clear this guy worked with Israel, and you have to wonder if people like Leon Black are funneling money to him and stuff. Are they working for them as well? That is a very reasonable, as Howard Lutnick would say, cutting question.
Yeah, well, only time will tell. Or maybe not.
Yeah. What? By the way, one more thing before some of the stuff in Alessi's Bannon documentary for us to talk about.
Yeah. What's up?
Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie are doing some great work on this case for sure. And the thing, you know, I've heard Ro Khanna talk over the years, and I have a similar opinion on his communication as I do to Thomas Massie. They're very, very almost like monotone, matter-of-fact guys, which is actually refreshing. Now, Massie, I have never seen him get worked up the way he got worked up at Pam Bondi. And I got to say, I fully understand that, especially some of the shit she was saying to him. I've never, ever seen him like that. He is not normally like that. It was like my crash out kind of, you know what I mean?
Pretty
it was
cool, dude.
Yeah. But Ro Khanna, do you have this video?
Yeah, I got it locked and loaded.
He said something very interesting because Ro and Massie were given access by the DOJ over the past week to go visit for a couple hours to review the redacted files that had been released with, you know, black redactions on them, to see what was under those redactions, because they weren't supposed to be redacted. And Ro actually revealed the names of the people, which, as we're watching this clip in a second, Deef, maybe you can pull up the 6 names that he revealed. One of them was Leslie Wexner, who we'll talk about was listed as a fucking co-conspirator. That we'll save that for later. But when he was talking to the media after one of these reviews in the hallway, he being Ro Khanna, he said something very interesting about the monarchy. So let's cue this up, the Ro clip. We got it?
Yeah.
Roller.
Next week.
Mr. Khanna, a British question, if I may. What do you say to the man formerly known as Prince Andrew and to Peter Mandelson with regard to giving evidence to your committee?
Mandelson may bring down the whole government, from what I hear. He just engaged in terrible behavior. I mean, the allegations are very serious that he was working for Gordon Brown and then feeding information about UK possibly buying euros and having Epstein trade on that. I mean, it is a deeply troubling. And, you know, Epstein's, I saw this interview with Epstein's former girlfriend talking about how someone is a loser if they weren't mentioned in the Epstein files. It's a window into the elite impunity, this club. Yeah. And by the way, I think this is the most vulnerable the British monarchy has ever been. I mean, I heard they were asking the Queen questions about the Epstein class. They ought to ask the King and Queen questions, and maybe this will be the end of the monarchy. Well,
Maybe this will be the end of the modern. Like that's like a bar. He's like, maybe this will be the end. Like that's a, I think we all have a lot of feelings about the monarchy system still existing in the fucking 21st century, but nonetheless, it's a house of cards. If you end the UK monarchy, if it comes down in scandal, they're all related to each other. All the other royal families, they will all, in my opinion, most likely collapse at the same time.
It's over.
It's
over.
But Mandelson's really interesting because he's a major power player in UK politics. I know all of our UK fans out there will know much more about Peter Mandelson than I do, but, just the impunity with which he passed around Jeffrey Epstein to all these people, obviously including the royal family itself. I think, if I remember, and this I'm trying to remember, he might have been the one who introduced Epstein originally to Prince Andrew. Check me on that in the comments. I'm trying to remember that off the top of my head. But, that's an earthquake type outcome here.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that like without opinion on what it would be, just in general, earthquake type outcome. The one part that really concerns me about that, and this is really without going into the weeds on it, like I'd really have to look at this, and I'd love to talk to an economist about this and some of the real financial experts. But when you consider the financial influence, holdings, and quote unquote underground influence of places like the United Kingdom royal family the other European royal families who hold symbolic government power, but it's like they still hold power it's a weird like double entendre, in a way, or I should say like paradox. If that rug just gets pulled like that in scandal, I don't know. I really don't, because I haven't looked at this yet in an educated way, but you gotta wonder if that causes some market runs and things like that, which affects all of us, affects the everyman. If you have a global economic crisis brought on by international scandal that pulls down some of the oldest systems known to man that control an enormous amount of money, and beyond just the money they personally control, influence over other monetary operations. That's, again, we get punished as a society for that. And Pam Bondi can't sit here and say, the Dow is at 50,000. We should be talking about the Dow.
But what she can say is, folks, Joey DeFilippis, he'll be able to live in the West Village now.
That's right. That's right. Joe will live in the West Village. He will live in a 900-foot studio instead of a 650 Brooklyn shit shack. I'm working on that, Joe. We're trying to make more money here.
Oh, so dude, hey, we're crushing it.
A nicer studio.
We're crushing it.
But that'll be a nice outcome. That'll be great.
It'll be great.
And it'll be like the Panic in Needle Park, Part 2.
Well, and then it'll bring the rise of a new serial killer in New York, and I'll be fearing for my life just to go buy milk.
Yes.
And we need that a little bit.
But you look like you would be Daredevil. I mean, I've seen you use a kettlebell. You've might actually be that person. I don't know if you're blind as a fucking bat, but like...
-4 on the contacts.
Ooh.
I'm him, folks. He's him.
He's him. But yeah, in all seriousness, that's a problem for everyone, regardless of whether or not we might be like, yay, no more royal families and stuff like that. There's third, fourth, fifth, and 10th order effects to this stuff. I always got to look at that, because I think we as a society, from a trust and institutional practices perspective, have already been the most let down you can possibly be let down. I mean, we're talking about like our kids being abused and killed and all kinds of awful things. It's already horrific.
Oh, dude,
we shouldn't have to take more.
That happens. If that happens with the royal family, Scotland will literally burn England to the ground. They will literally go buck wild. They'll be like, we're fucking independent, lad. We're fucking independent. No, but dude, my only thing that I keep thinking about now for the last 2 minutes was the whole the elite impunity thing. Like, and again, this is just armchair talk from me over here. But you know, what do you think of the thought that if nothing really does come of these things, like nothing, absolutely nothing, other than just like some fun scandals on X, like what does that leave for the future of like people really knowing it now, like blatantly knowing it now? Like to your earlier point that these people look at you and they're like, you're literally a schmuck. Like we're going to do whatever the hell we want. Like what happens?
It's a valid question,
What
unfortunately.
happens?
It's a very valid question. And it's, well, before I directly answer it, I think
does that like really bring like the true like I think it brings that real fourth turning now. Like it is really going to bring the upheaval effect of that whole theory, because you know, you or me is different, but like if you're a guy who like is genuinely like middle-aged guy, has a family, has a job, like he's caught in the thing, how do you go on? How do you actually go on, other than because like you love your family and what have you? Sure, but like how do you go on playing the game and doing this bullshit and you're just like, I'm getting fucked on tax? Like how do you go on?
if you know. That's the first answer to the question before we get to the crux of the question, which is an important one, is if you know and if you decide to look into it enough to care. You and I heard a phone call with someone close to me.
Yeah.
Who, called me.
Yeah.
Before we got on air today. And they wanted to know, they're like, I don't really know about this Epstein case. Like, what's the deal and why should I care? And this individual is I'd say like a pretty
intelligent,
solid,
individual.
definitely intelligent, but like solidly conservative, definitely Trump supporting individual who, like most Americans, and I'll add most smart Americans as well, like in general, votes on the 1, 2, or 3 things that are important to him, and then feels strongly about that, right? Mm-hmm. He is a representative, though, of the divide here, the other divide. And that is the divide of people who know and people who are blissfully, ignorantly going about their life with something like this and allowing it to continue. We've talked in the past about what if social media were around in the 1960s while Vietnam was happening, a president was killed, Martin Luther King was killed, RFK was killed, all this stuff happened. Mm-hmm. Like everything would be burning.
Yeah.
But because people only had access to 3 channels and just basic takes on what had happened, not even takes, just reporting of like just the basics of what had happened.
Take what you get.
They took what they could get and they went about their life, and all the things that happened behind closed doors, they had no access to even know those meetings were happening behind closed doors. Fast forward to today. Believe it or not, like, well, now I might not say it after this whole scandal, but before this scandal really broke open, I would say as bad as things got in some cases, it wasn't as bad as like our government killing the president, MLK being killed, going into Vietnam on a lie, all of our guys dying over in Vietnam brutally, and then having fights here and riots here over the fucking war. Like, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
But we all had a fucking access to the information and the ability to give an opinion on it, and bot campaigns to be able to come in to influence said opinions and get people all riled up at each other. So you have people, even in that world, who only see what's in their algorithm and only engage with the things that they want to take the time to engage with. So to quote what this individual said to me on the phone, he's like, I don't got time to read 3 million fucking emails.
Yeah, it's that headache effect. People are just like, oh, well, listen, obviously I care, but like, I don't have time to be...
That's right.
3.5 million files.
That's right. That's right. And so there, you have to remember, for all of you listening right now, many of you listening right now, chances are you have at least moderate or in some cases amazing knowledge on this case and have looked at it a lot. And great for you. I think that's an important thing. I'm sure you can relate to me when you think about your own life and think about all the people in it that you like and probably respect, and then even people you intellectually respect as well, regardless of their politics, who maybe haven't looked at it at all. And they're like, I don't know what the fuck. All right, it sounds bad. Whatever. All right. You know, it's not like people are like, you know what, it's fine. They're fucking kids. That's not it. It's just a matter of like, are you taking the time to actually understand how deep this goes and what it affects? And I can't explain in a 16-minute phone call to said individual the gravity of the situation with all evidence and all understanding as to what's real and what's not. Because that was a valid question he asked me. You heard this.
Oh,
He's
no,
like,
I heard it, yeah.
How do you be able to know what's real and what's fake? That's a very valid question. And
Very
I said,
simple answer, though, fairly.
it is if you know what's going on in the case, right? So I said, and this was the one dumb thing he kind of said. But I said to him, I said, well, that's a great question because there are a lot of fake screenshots and stuff floating around that go viral. You have to go to justice.gov. And he goes, what's that? And I went, oh boy. I was like, well, that's where the government releases this stuff.
You know,
so
Department
you
of
can
Justice,
actually,
DOJ?
Yes, you can source it from the DOJ and know you're on their link so you can determine if you're clicking this email, that is actually what the email was. He's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But there's a generational divide and there is an interest divide and there is a time spent versus time spent somewhere else divide with a case like this. And so to get the volume loud enough to drown out other speakers with other stories and other places where people can get their attention is important. It's not to say you got to go fucking stand in the middle of the road and sit in on the ground at a stoplight and not let cars go by because they need to learn about Epstein first. I'm not advocating for any of that. I think
Not
that
a
has
bad
the
idea.
opposite effect. But, you know, you got to talk about the case. And it's not a fun thing to talk about at dinner parties, but it's something that like when you can spend 16 minutes on the phone with a guy like that and at least give a little bit of an outline, a little bit of a curiosity loop, a little bit of a, well, what if? Because here's what I said to him. The guy is a Trump supporter, as I said. And I said, listen, if I talk about what the current Trump administration is doing, and I talk about the cover-up that's going on and the people who are perpetuating it and the guilt they may have, I also have the ability to hold two thoughts at the same time from an objective, trying to look at it, journalistic perspective. And that is, that doesn't therefore mean I am now going back and saying, you know what? Joe Biden was alive for 4 years.
Joe Biden.
He was a great president. He was with it. He knew how to do all these bills for real and what was actually happening. And you know what? Kamala Harris, she wasn't that bad of a candidate. No, objectively, we had a president for 4 years who didn't know where he was. The country was being run by people who weren't elected. It was American corruption to the core in that way. We had a vice president who was a fucking wine mom who couldn't put a goddamn sentence together and probably had some other stuff going on there. I don't know. That's just what I think. And they were bad candidates. Just before you even get to their political positions. Just from like a basic human standpoint of like, can you sit at that desk and do the job? They were bad candidates. That's why at the time I was like, yo, like Donald Trump kind of won this by default. It was like, you want that? That was the sale. Get a load of this. And people said, yeah, you know what? Fuck it. And they hit it. One of the promises Donald Trump made was to release the Epstein files. So he's halfway broken that promise by redacting all the important parts and covering up for people, which is, I think, worse than not releasing it at all because it makes you complicit. People, when they voted at the time, didn't know that. And people were voting on things like the border and stuff like that. And objectively, like, you know, it sounds like we got a lot of work to do, but like, yeah, but literally by default, Trump's been a better president on the border than fucking Joe Biden. Is he a better president at managing who we hire into ICE? Probably not. You know, a push and a pull, if you will. But like, what I told this guy is I said, by saying what I'm saying about what the mistakes of the current administration are, I'm not therefore endorsing retroactively the last administration or the people who were running against them.
Right.
It's a fuck everybody moment. And I gave him the line about fighting vertically here. Because this guy's actually like, I describe him as like a pretty wealthy dude. He certainly ain't balling like these fucking people at all, but like he's a pretty wealthy dude. And what I was saying to him is I'm like, you and the guy who makes, $20 an hour are actually in the same grouping in this situation. That's how micro this cancer at the top is with our institutions. And I'm like, we are at a point where if they don't fucking get transparent as hell and just hit the chemo and kill all the bad cells on their own volition very quickly, they are going to make this worse, louder, get more people to make phone calls like that to people like me to get more information out so that everyone is a little bit more fucking informed. And these institutions are at risk of burning to the ground overnight. And I will tell you, as fun as that is to think about, it's a lot of fun to think about. I mean, everyone loves a good fire, right? But
Oh yeah.
not really, but you know what I mean? Like, that would not be good to all happen like in one fell swoop. We had Trita Parsi in here last week. We did episode 382 with him. I really appreciate his perspective. You know what I loved about him, Deef? He came out and voluntarily would say, before I make this next point, I need to reveal my bias in the situation and what I was involved with so that people can take that with a grain of, like, such a breath of fresh air. I really, really enjoyed that podcast. Trita Parsi was born in Iran and was forced out of the country when he was 4 years old. His dad was arrested by the regime. He was not executed, which he explained how he wasn't executed in the story, and it's pretty wild. His dad's still alive today, which is cool. But he's obviously advocated for the regime to change over there over the years, but he has also done so in a way where he has been against American intervention militarily to do it, which means that he is willing to put the greater good of, like, the country he lives in now ahead of the short-term solution he would very much like to see in his own country that he was kicked out against his own will from as a child. Yeah. Which, it by the way, it doesn't mean he's right. I happen to think he makes a pretty good point there myself. You guys can judge that on your own, but I think it takes a big man to do that. And yeah, again, a guy who's dedicated his career to founding organizations that are trying to switch this over. And one of the things he and I talked about was revolution and the dangers of that. And he was so amazed by the American Revolution and how well it was done. Yeah. And what incredible foresight these guys had. Obviously, they didn't get everything perfect, but they did an amazing job overall. And he's like, the thing you got to be careful about with that is calling that the rule rather than an exception.
Yeah, that was rare.
Yeah. A lot of revolutions end in totalitarianism because the bottom of the boot becomes the boot itself very, very quickly. And Iran was, in 1979, was an amazing example of that. The Shah had done a lot of wrong things, and then they overthrew him, and they actually made something worse. And so when I'm looking at our moment here, it's not a popular thing to say. It gets a lot of fucking dislikes on social media, but it's, in my opinion, the right thing to say, looking at it as objectively as possible. Burning down all the institutions at once, even the ones that would be really fun to burn down, is probably not a great idea. But doing a massive chemotherapy-like, full-scale attack on the stage 3 cancer. I'd like to think it's stage 3, not stage 4. That's me putting that in there. That is very necessary. And that will burn down a lot of very rotted rooms in these mansions. A lot of them. And call it a compromise, call it what you want to call it. I think that's something that as we approach this, we need to consider. And you've heard me. I get angry too. Get angry. But then step back. Think about the logic of how we handle it. Right now, what's in front of us? We want to push for a lot more transparency. Yeah. You have two or three people in Washington who are actually trying to do that. They need support from the public to do that. Give them that support. It's been nice to see Republicans and Democrats alike talking about Massey and Khanna as like a team. That's been cool. Yeah, see Sean Ryan bringing on Ro Khanna multiple times. Yeah, I saw that. Shout out to Sean on that. Sean is a very, very conservative guy, very open about that. And, he's like, let's talk with Ro. Ro's doing the right thing because you know what? Sean Ryan really cares about kids not getting abused.
You know what I think
What
we
an
should
original
do?
thought.
You know what I think we should do?
What should we do, Dave?
You know, like back in the day when people like thought like a woman was a witch, they had tests. So one of the tests, this is one of my favorite tests they used to conduct. One of the tests was they would go to a pond in the village or the what have you, and they would tie a cinder block to the alleged witch's ankle, and if she sinks, she's a witch, obviously. But if she floats, she's not a witch. What if we took all the accused in the Epstein files and we tried that test? Because, like, for example, Mr. Lutnick, if he is innocent, he'll just float to the high heavens. The thing is, though, with this method back in the day, they had a 100% hit rate. So they lived amongst a lot of witches, and I think we might be as well.
Oh, that's a line I use all the time from Tony Soprano. If he was drowning, I'd throw him a fucking cinder block. I use that all the time.
It's so true.
You've heard me say it on the show. It's
Should
an
try
amazing,
that.
amazing line. Yeah, maybe we should try that. But yeah. So I think it's a very important moment, but we've been teasing it the whole time. I want to get to Alessi Alaman's amazing work right here. We're going to watch a few minutes of this and talk about it, and then there's another segment I want to watch, but you guys really need to go see the full half hour linked down below when we're done here, because it is well worth it. And then and you can watch them out of order. There was a documentary before this that you can watch right after that gives like the full outline of Bannon's life. That was really, really good. But let's roll it, Deef. We got it?
Yeah,
it's on 1.5, right?
I just wanted to get it to its spot. Yeah, let me just change that.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, cool.
Let's roll.
Until February 1990. At Goldman, he was helping companies defend themselves against hostile takeovers. After living on Wall Street for 2 years, Bannon moves from New York City to Beverly Hills, of all places, to help Goldman Sachs expand its presence in the entertainment business. But then, just over 2 years later, Bannon and a senior colleague ditched Goldman Sachs and decided to open their own small investment company, still in Beverly Hills. So check this out. According to Bannon, the firm's clients over the next half dozen years included Crédit Lyonnais, that's a French word that I'm butchering and will continue to butcher,
This is
MGM,
great work
Polygram.
right
The
here.
French banks are going to be the most important and possibly explain why Epstein had one of his apartments in Paris. Because now we need to look at one of the most famous Epstein clients, and that is billionaire and former CEO of Apollo Global Management, Leon Black. The man who paid Epstein $170 million between 2012 and 2017 for taxes and estate planning. A simple Google search will tell you that extremely high net worth people like Leon Black may pay anywhere from $2,000 to over $25,000 from help, maybe even $100,000 or slightly higher. But $170 million in 7 years makes absolutely no sense. In 1998, the company was acquired by an offshoot of the French bank Société Générale, and he remained there for a couple years. He had brief stints at Jefferies, an investment bank, and as a talent management company, the firm, as a strategic advisor. Now, at the same time, Leon Black was rising through Drexel, Burnham Lambert, the most aggressive and notorious investment bank of the era. He was there from 1977 to 1990 in New York City, the same exact period Bannon was at Goldman Sachs in New York City.
Ooh,
But here's where it gets weird. Most bank centers are in Manhattan. Drexel's center of gravity wasn't. It was in Beverly Hills, where Bannon would relocate. So here's where the actual timeline starts to matter. In 1990, Drexel Burnham Lambert collapses. But what happens instead is weird. Because almost immediately after Drexel falls apart, the same foreign French banks start showing up behind the scenes over and over again. Crédit Lyonnais, which I will keep butchering. So stay with me. Around that same time, Crédit Lyonnais is doing massive business with Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who from all my previous videos I've done was pretty clearly a Mossad, MI6, KGB intelligence cutout or asset, kind of like Adnan Khashoggi, which you should go check out those videos. So when Maxwell suddenly dies in 1991 and his empire implodes, banks all over the world realize they've been stiff. According to the Los Angeles Times, Crédit Lyonnais was widely described as the biggest loser in the whole mess. Not one of many, the biggest. And that is the same Maxwell
they're
that Craig
dead
Hoover
up to
later
their
writes about in
eyeballs.
American Compromat. The guy allegedly helping Soviet intelligence design a system of front companies to move billions through commodities, embedded themselves into Western markets, and quietly offshore money at scale. So whether every allegation sticks or not, what is clear is that Maxwell was radioactive, and Crédit Lyonnais was right there with him. Now, zoom back to Leon Black.
Here we go.
After Drexel collapses, Black is suddenly untethered. Wall Street is spooked, the whole junk bond network is toxic, and yet, according to Apollo Global's own origin story, Crédit Lyonnais cold calls Leon Black and offers him an enormous sum of money to start a brand new firm. That firm becomes Apollo Global Management. Just sit with that for a second. An aggressive French state-linked bank, already overextended, already doing questionable deals, is the one stepping in to bankroll the next American private equity giant immediately. Now, here's where Jeffrey Epstein enters the picture. So journalist Jesse Kornbluth told his former colleague Unger that he met Epstein long before Apollo Global. At the time, Kornbluth said Epstein was spending a lot of time with Leon Black, the multi-billionaire investor who was running one of the biggest investment banks in the country.
What are the chances?
Epstein and I talked about Leon Black, Kornbluth told me, and this was in 1986. And it doesn't stop there. At almost the exact same moment, Steve Bannon is moving through the same financial ecosystem. So Bannon leaves Goldman Sachs in 87, and he starts a small investment shop in Beverly Hills called Bannon & Company with a few ex-Goldman Sachs guys. And one of the firm's clients is Credit Lyonnais, the same French bank. So now you've got the same bank tied to Robert Maxwell's collapse, Leon Black's rebirth, and Steve Bannon's early deal-making all clustered together around...
That's amazing work. So you have a foreign bank coming in at a moment where shit also goes boom in a bad way that they are invested in, and they somehow are able to leverage their fucking already leverage up to their eyeballs balance sheets into this company that would become one of the biggest private equity firms in the United States. Boom, right there. And somehow it's tied directly at the crossroads to when Jeffrey Epstein is meeting the founder of that company and Steve Bannon is setting up shop for the entertainment industry financing out in fucking Beverly Hills, but taking all this funneled money from France, which, by the way, and this is a total like kind of non sequitur to all this, it's just something that's been in the back of my head as well that's worth thinking about. One of the intelligence agencies around the world that all of the US intel guys talk about as like a kind of sleeping giant, if you will, is the French intelligence. They said French intelligence does not get a lot of press or respect, but those motherfuckers are ruthless. And so it's interesting to me, again, that's just a side comment on my part. It's interesting to me that that would be the country where they choose to have the bank financed. And, you know, when you do a job like this, Steve, as you well know, we talk with a lot of different people from a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different things. And there are little moments and little stories or little phrases, really, is what I'm thinking about right now, that stick with you, that start to then, once you learn it, you kind of like bring it into your worldview. You ask, well, first you're like, why does that make sense? You think about it from every level with which that guest explained it, and then apply it to things you've seen in your own life. And you're like, wow, checks out. And then it's kind of clicking there. And one of the earliest ones that happened is one of the simplest ones that ever happened. Jim DiOrio in episode 48 told me every investigation you ever look at, this is someone who's a high up special agent at the FBI, always follow the money regardless of what the case is. It is almost always based on that. And obviously, I mean, big surprise here, the Epstein case is based on money. But Alessi following that money to the same source in France and tying together all these people at the same time, a critical time, a post-Black Monday time, to where this phoenix, if you will, rises from the ashes in multiple places right when Jeffrey Epstein's going to be hitting the picture and right when Robert Maxwell is going to be going out, but still has enough fucking clout to push some, maybe, allegedly, push some of these people together. That is very fascinating to me. And a very fascinating insight by one Alessi Alamán. But there was one other segment in here I want to hone in on, Deef. And it was Alessi looking decades back at something that came to fruition decades later. And what's one thing we have all talked about in here with so many different people who have sat across from me? The fact that in America, we tend to think about fucking today, maybe tomorrow, right? But intelligence organizations, and especially intelligence organizations in some other places, think about things in terms of decades. And in some cases, even centuries on certain things. That sounds nuts, but it's real. And Alessi unearthed one that... Run it, Deef.
So here's where I might lose a few of you because it has to do with mind control. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but this is the beginning stages of a company called Cambridge Analytica, which we all know about from the 2016 election. So in 1992, a company called SCL Group is founded. According to reporting by The New Yorker, the SCL specializes in understanding how people think, how fear spreads, and how emotions, not facts, can drive behavior. From the beginning, it had deep ties to the United Arab Emirates, where powerful royal families were already plunged into global finance, intelligence services, and Western elites. So one former employee described the atmosphere inside SCL as Game of Thrones level stuff. And I think he's alluding to people getting killed or moved around and just power. Rich people, governments, no rules. The company was dominated by two elite British insiders, Nigel Oakes, who lived in Dubai, and Alexander Nix, who would later run SCL's America offshoot, Cambridge Analytica. So Oakes was unusually honest about what they were doing. In 1992, he openly said their techniques were inspired by Aristotle and Hitler. The goal wasn't persuasion through logic, it was emotional control. Fear, identity, grievance. Get people to feel first, then justify later.
Yes.
Kind of how people respond to our politics today. Just look at what's happening in Minneapolis. Now, fast forward to the early 2000s, Steve Bannon's small Beverly Hills investment firm gets acquired by our favorite French bank. After that, he bounces through finance, including time at Jefferies, not Jeffrey Epstein, a different company. The title doesn't matter, the proximity does. Jefferies is run by Rich Handler, a former Drexel insider and longtime associate of Leon Black. Same circle, again. Then comes 2007. The financial crisis hits and Apollo Global Management needs capital. They turn to Abu Dhabi, to the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, the same institution tied to major global banking scandals. By 2011, Apollo co-founder Josh Harris used that wealth to buy the Philadelphia 76ers. Around that same time, former CIA executive A.B. Kronger joins Apollo's board, and Apollo acquires the military contractor formerly known as Blackwater, a company deeply embedded in Middle Eastern operations, and that's UAE. That same year, 2011, Steve Bannon meets Robert Mercer and Rebecca Mercer. And they like him. They soon fund him, and after that, they pour money into SCL's American arm, Cambridge Analytica. They are also the seed money that would be used to help launch Breitbart News into the stratosphere. Here's where all these companies, rich elite circles, start to see some double dipping.
So Cambridge Analytica, as Alessi explained, just as a review, was the company that was widely used effectively by the Trump campaign in 2016 to emotionally, as an emotional tool to win the election. What this is pointing out, though, is the wheels for that were started 25 years before. And they started it before the internet went mainstream. They started it in 1992. I think the internet was like 89 or 91 or something like that, but it wasn't like mainstream until 95, 96, and really like 98, 99. But before the internet's even around, they were already putting the tools into place to program you and me by basing us into a fear setting so that we would have that as our initial impulse, so that the very evolutionary sciences that exist in our brain could be used against us like a weapon we have turned on ourselves, to then impact how we react to things around the world as a result of already having that baseline set of fearing X, Y, or Z, whatever they decide to point our attention to. And then guys like Steve Bannon, who are around this and financing it and things like that, are then able to just very calmly come up with more funding. And I don't know, after Andrew Breitbart gets unalive in, 2011, Steve Bannon can step in to be at the forefront of Breitbart News at a time where they start to use the fear culture war to set the pathway to what would become Trump's run. All of it's tied together. It's very, very interesting. And by the way, left and right use this strategy inside and out. We're talking about Bannon, so obviously he's focused on right-wing causes. I don't even think Bannon's like really right-wing. I think Bannon's just a spy. But he's using it for right-wing causes as the front. This is exactly what all left-wing outlets do as well, and they gaslight on fear. Yep. Remember when they said mostly peaceful protests in front of fucking burning fires and shit and buildings that were falling apart behind them in Minneapolis? It has to do with creating the impulse that people are like, well, this is justified because I'm fearing the opposite of it. And so therefore, whatever I'm seeing back there, it's not really what I'm seeing. I'm seeing what the man tells me I'm seeing because I already feel a certain type of way about this situation. I was on the phone with someone earlier this week, a very interesting phone call, someone I never talked to before, who's I would describe as like a pretty serious guy. And he was really, and I mean this in a good way, like stressed out about this case. And he had really been looking at it and probably looking at it a lot more over the past 3-4 weeks than he had ever looked at it before. And one of the things he kept asking me is, what is this? And he would lay out all the different cases, and he's like, is this sex trafficking, or is it money laundering, or is it just arms dealing with Khashoggi, or is it government contracting for espionage everywhere, starting with one place but then going everywhere? And I said, the evidence seems to show it's a combination of all the above. It's not one or the other. These emails show that if Jeffrey Epstein wanted to make some deal with the government of Sierra Leone because it was Tuesday at 1:15 in the afternoon, he was a little bored, he did it. The emails show that if Jeffrey Epstein wanted to talk in code about minors and things that would be done to them, which unfortunately may actually even be somehow worse than the awful abuse we already know about, he would do it. If Jeffrey Epstein wanted to fly out to Saudi and meet with MBS and take a fucking selfie with him like a dude takes a selfie with his boy on the street when they visit Dubai because they're just fucking white boys with motion, he would do it. So the real answer to what this case is and what it's going to be lies in getting to the bottom of just how deep these co-conspirators go. And I'm talking about just the first people we know about, which are the ones Ro Khanna was nice enough to come tell us were the redacted names in the book. This included a sheikh, I believe. And the one I'm focused on is Leslie Wexner, because the disgusting part about Leslie Wexner, who is the CEO of L Brands, which owns Victoria's Secret, which, you know, that's not weird at all. But this guy's been talked about for years. And he's never so much as been interviewed. He's been above the law in every way, redacted from disgusting emails. He is the source of Jeffrey Epstein's wealth, as we know it, signed over the biggest townhouse in Manhattan to him, was signed over power of attorney to Jeffrey Epstein to take care of all of his finances and basically his whole life if he wanted to, and is listed, as we now know, in the files as a co-conspirator. And yet, forget not being arrested, which he should have been arrested day one, should be in a jail cell right now with functioning security cameras that are on 24/7 that everyone can see to make sure no funny business happens, by the way. That's neither here nor there.
Wink, wink.
You know, he should be in there. He's never even been interviewed. Like the most basic thing ever. And so when that absolute stone cold, low IQ, to borrow a Donald Trump term, moron, Pam Bondi, sits there in Congress and gets wine mom shrieks out about the Dow and yells it at a Jewish Congress lady whose grandparents died in the Holocaust about being suggesting that she's an anti-Semite. What were some of her other great hits there? Oh, didn't look at the victims of Epstein when they stood up behind her. Those images, those videos, watch the videos. The image can be taken out of context. There's video of it. She refused to turn around and look at them like a serial killer refuses to turn around and look around at his victims at a sentencing hearing. You know, and also tried to hit, you know, some Trump greatest hits lines at Thomas Massie while Thomas Massie lost his mind at her, which I've never seen him do that. I actually appreciated it. You know, who would I be to talk, telling him not to lose his mind? That would be the fucking throwing stones from glass houses. You know, like just the worst performance ever. It's like, to me, I translated everything she said to Bread and Circus.
Yeah.
She just said, oh, look at your 401ks. It's so good. Don't worry about the fact that we're inflating all your fucking money away. Don't worry about the fact your kids are never going to have a job. AI's taking over. And by the way, a bunch of people were kids on a pedo island. Don't worry about all that. Look at the stock market. Look at the shiny object. Look over here. That's what she was saying to you. I don't know how that's different from Bill de Blasio holding the fucking airplane in your face telling you to take the vaccine. Same vibes. So now Les Wexner is being called to testify in this separate Ohio State case about someone high up there who sexually abused all these people, which is disgusting. And he is apparently, I'm seeing some news, Deep, maybe you can check this. He's going to talk to some investigators related to the Epstein case, or he's going to have to answer some questions related to that. So at least we're getting somewhere. But like the fact that he's not sitting in front of Congress right now, in front of the whole world, answering questions about why he was the chief financier for the world's most prolific espionage known pedophile ever, and a lot of other things as well. You know, that's crazy, and you have to ask questions why. Again, I would remind you, when George Bush put together like his Israel commission in 2008, Les Wexner was on it. Apple don't fall too far from the tree here. So it's really gross. But I want to close out today's episode, Deef, with a question that I've asked before in some other podcasts. I remember actually, you know, I've talked about it in a few on here, but I believe I talked about this with Mike Ritlin on his podcast. And I know we've talked about it on Patreon, so our patrons have seen it before. But how Jeffrey Epstein got his money, how he got rich. There's a thread that I've never seen the brilliant investigators really pull on that's so fascinating to me that I hope someone smarter than me out there with more means and access to information can pull on and figure out, that's worth discussing. And that is the transition from Robert Maxwell to Jeffrey Epstein. So Robert Maxwell dies on those islands off the west coast of Africa in November 1991. They say he unalived himself, you know, like they always do. He just jumped off his boat because he had this $400 million pension scam scheme at the Daily Mirror. Now, for everyone out there, just as a quick reminder, Robert Maxwell is Ghislaine Maxwell's father. He was an awful guy, probably by all accounts a sadist, including he may have been a sadist to Ghislaine. There's evidence on that, which excuses nothing that she did, by the way. I'm just saying that as an aside. A very sick individual, narcissistic fuck. Unbelievable spy, though. Unbelievable spy. This is a man who was born in the middle of fucking Europe on a kibbutz, spoke, I think, like Czech or whatever, one of those languages, and Yiddish. That's it. Until he was 17, and he fled Europe right before the Holocaust, went to the UK at age 17. And I'm pointing that out because within 5 years, because he served in the British military during World War II, within 5 years, and maybe less than that, not only did he master the entire English language, not only did he completely get rid of his Central European accent, but he also learned how to speak the English dialect of the kings, which is like the royal dialect, where they say yes and is and things like that. They speak differently in a more dignified, but frankly fucking annoying as hell way. He spoke like that his whole life. This is a guy who, as early as World War II itself, was providing information for groups that would become Israel, for the KGB and MI6. He was serving all different places. But when he was unalived, his body was transported to Israel, and he was buried on the Mount of Olives, attended by some of the highest dignitaries in the Israeli government. And the Mount of Olives is a place that is reserved for the highest level rabbis and I believe the highest level political people in Israel, which, you know, kind of tells you all you need to know. That said, Robert Maxwell, for all the evil that he was no dummy. He was a narcissist. He was his own worst enemy. There's no doubt about that, but he was no dummy. And the idea that he left behind a $400 million pension scam and was worth nothing, when this is a guy who, among many businesses he had, was the head of the Daily Mirror, which was the second biggest publication in the world at the time, during the peak of fucking Princess Diana, by the way, so they are printing money around the world. The idea that he was destitute has never made any sense. And if you really don't believe me on that, just look at the fact that his sons, the scions, were put on trial in 1996, I believe, in the UK for this pension scam and found not guilty. When do you ever see wealthy individuals of a family who bilked a bunch of hardworking people and pissed off the entire public in international scandal found not guilty in a court of law of those crimes when they are brought there to face it, even if they're not the ones who perpetuated it and they got to stand for the sins of the father? Fucking never. Never. But they were found not guilty. And I surmise that a lot of that had to do with the fact that there probably wasn't a pension scam. Because I've cited this before, but Tara Palmieri hosted 2 amazing podcasts back in, I believe, 2020. One was basically called The Maxwells, and the other one was basically called Epstein. And these podcasts were essentially 8-part, 1-hour documentaries that just happened to be audio. I wish she did it on video, but they were audio, and they're like storytelling with voiceovers and then on-the-ground recordings and stuff like that. And in one of those podcasts, I want to say it was the Epstein one, she went around with Virginia Roberts Giuffre, rest in peace, who just died this year, who was a major whistleblower in this case, as a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. Tara went around with Virginia Roberts Giuffre, and she would go to different places where people that Virginia came into contact with while she was in Epstein's orbit stayed. So like one time they went to the famous chef Adam Perry Lang's gated community and asked to meet with him. Adam Perry Lang later became famous, but from 03 to 06, he was Epstein's chef. I'm sure he saw nothing though, right? And Adam Perry Lang, through like an emissary, said, "Oh my God, yeah, I remember Virginia. I hope all is well. I'm sorry I can't meet with you though." Didn't fucking meet with her. Another place they went was to Epstein's housekeeper's place, which was also a gated community, to this gentleman by the name of Juan Alessi. And to Juan Alessi's credit, not only did he let them in, he was excited to see Virginia, like they record him and everything, but he let them record him. He agreed to be recorded with all 3 of them in a room, him, Tara, and Virginia, to answer questions on the record about this. And I will give him that. I appreciate that. When you listen to the recording, it is one of the more difficult human things to listen to because you are pulled into multiple different emotions at the same time. On the one hand, you are angry at this man for, he was paid incredibly well, obviously, as a housekeeper for Jeffrey Epstein, because you're paid to keep your mouth shut, right? And do a job that would usually pay a lot less. But on the one hand, you're angry at him for never saying anything and never helping or never stopping this stuff or speaking up. On the other hand, you realize as like an immigrant who was hired to this job who had to sign an insane NDA, who probably didn't know what he was getting into until he was there, he was scared. You get that. Yeah, I have to give him that. On the other hand, you also see the genuine affection, in my opinion, that he had for Virginia. And on the other hand, you also see the fact that he allowed someone like her to be abused and not do anything about it, and he's living and wrestling with that guilt. There are so many things going on when you listen to this guy. It's one of the most important things I ever listened to as far as like an interview with someone goes. But in the midst of this sit down, Juan Alessi made a very, very interesting observation. He talked about when, the genesis of him working with Jeffrey. And he's like, I was working with Jeffrey in the late 80s and everything, and I'm working at this place on the Upper East Side. And he was rich, but, wasn't crazy rich. He described like the size of the place he lived in, the kind of places he would go. And he goes, "But then, in 1992, something happened, man. Because he got really rich." That's when he started looking at buying the plane. And I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head, but that's when the townhouse started to become a thing. I think that was officially later signed over, but he like moved into the townhouse, I believe, in 1992. He was flying all over the world. He was looking at building the place in Florida. I don't know if the island was in the picture yet, but basically, Juan Alessi, you can refer to that podcast from Tower Palmieri, who I hope at some point will come on the show. We've talked about it before through a mutual friend of mine, but I would love to bring Tara in here. So if people want to hit her up and say, I'd love to have her in here. I don't think she lives too far from here. That would be awesome. She's another Wayne, New Jersey person, by the way, Deef.
Really?
So that would be cool. But, I'm listening to this, and it's very clear to me that he went from 0 to 100 in 1992. It is crystal clear. And his net worth is estimated at that time when people look back on this case is in the $400 million-ish area. That's pretty interesting. You have a guy die, probably pushed, right, Thief? Off the coast of Africa, who conveniently leaves behind a $400 million pension scam. And then here's the kicker. Ghislaine had met Jeffrey in her life. I believe her father introduced her to Jeffrey, but people check me in the comments. I don't remember that for sure.
I think that's it, yeah.
Ghislaine is left with no money. This is a girl who, she never known a life without no money. So she goes to New York, and one of the Oxenbergs, who's a royal family in Europe, I want to say it was Catherine, but if it wasn't Catherine, it was her sister, was a New York socialite at the time. That's always a sketchy term. When you hear someone is listed as a New York socialite, red flag should be flying. But anyway, Catherine's interviewed on the record by Tara Palmieri, and she talks about Ghislaine, who she knew, I guess common to run in those types of circles. She would go see her when Ghislaine lived in this little apartment for Ghislaine standards in New York. And she'd be like, oh my God, so worried about money and everything. And then Ghislaine slides up right next to Jeffrey. And now she got her sugar daddy. And now she got the money again. Somebody go find me how that $400 million, sub $400 million, found its way from Robert Maxwell's bank account to leave a pension hole at the Daily Mirror into somebody's coffers that probably somehow ended up in Leslie Wexner's coffers. I don't have proof of that right now. I'm purely speculating. These are allegations that are purely speculative in nature. I want to be very clear on that. But someone go find out how I got from A to B to C, Leslie Wexner, to D, Jeffrey Epstein, and you might hit a little jackpot on this case. I don't know. Maybe you won't. Maybe it's nothing. It's possible it's nothing. But no one's ever sufficiently answered that question for me. So we're going to keep following this as it goes out. I hope by the time this is released, Howard Lutnick has done the most basic possible decent thing and resigned. I won't hold my breath on that. But, we're going to follow this case wherever it goes, whoever it goes to, and however it goes, and do our best to, in the words of my friend Tommy G, boil our pot of the ocean and let the rest of you and other people out there do the same and see if we can all come together and make a nice little tidal wave here. Sound good?
Let's do it.
Let's do it, boy.
Let's do it.
All right, until next week, everybody. Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you guys, as always, for watching this video. If you have not already, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. We are going to have an upcoming episode, as I said, with an Epstein victim and a great returning guest who's going to break down all the Epstein emails. You are not going to want to miss it. See you guys soon.